Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I hope you enjoyed the keynote. There were a lot of exciting announcements. And I hope you guys get a chance to use the new products. In this session, we have a very interesting talk about sharing data across organization. So our team here, our speakers here are from Databricks, Nikhil and DJ. And they're going to talk about how to share data safely and have privacy in mind. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to them. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this session. I'm Nikhil Gaikwad. I lead product management for data and AI collaboration. Joining me is DJ Sharkey, also engineering and tech lead for data and AI collaboration. In this session, we're going to talk about how you can leverage clean rooms to be able to collaborate with your partners in a privacy-centric way. Well, one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think about data sharing is sort of the traditional data sharing methods, like sharing files over SFTP, or maybe you're using Excel and still sending that over email. Or if you're in the modern stack and you're maybe using something like Delta sharing to be able to share data in place. Those are some of the methods of data sharing, but not all data can actually be shared across organizational boundaries. Maybe it's like hypersensitive, or maybe that data has some regulations that you cannot share it across your org boundaries. But of course, there's a lot of things that you can actually unlock when it comes to data collaboration and sharing, especially when you're sharing this across your customers or your partners. So the question really is there a way for us to share data across organizational boundaries without revealing that data with our partners? Is that even possible? Well, I'm going to give you the secret. Yes, it is, through Databricks Clean Rooms. So in this session, we're going to essentially walk you through some of the challenges that organizations are seeing when it comes to data collaboration. We'll give you an overview of our product, which is Databricks Clean Rooms, and show you a quick demo how it works. We'll also talk about some of the challenges when it comes to privacy and how do you use clean rooms to ensure your data is shared in a privacy-centric way. And last but not least, we'll talk about some of the successful customer stories that we've seen with clean rooms and also our partner ecosystem. So we have a pretty packed agenda to walk you through. Starting off with some stats. So when we talk to a lot of enterprises, and this was a survey that was done last year, over 93% of organizations said that it's really important for them to collaborate with data, and essentially leads to higher levels of innovation, and it drives revenue for a lot of enterprises. But there's always a but. A lot of enterprises also said that over 56% of them think that data sharing is difficult because of privacy, and they have concerns about how they can make their data available to their partners, especially when the data contains some sensitive information. So for this, a lot of customers are, again, looking for alternatives to be able to collaborate with their partners while ensuring that data remains private. And what are some of the challenges that we're seeing across the industry when it comes to data sharing? Well, the first one is that there's certainly some privacy and compliance laws that are continuing to change. So if you look at GDPR and CCPA, or some of these regulations that are being enforced, it's really important for organizations to think about how do you ensure, when it comes to data collaboration, you're remaining compliant and you're also respecting user privacy. Again, you have a trust with your customers to make sure that the data stays private, and of course, it's only being used for the right reasons. And of course, there's also risks when it comes to data security, right? With so many data breaches, you have to ensure that you're storing your data in a centralized way where you can govern that data asset. And most importantly, staying in control of that data, especially when it leaves your organizational boundaries, is really important. So data security is a big concern when it comes to collaboration for a lot of organizations. And lastly, complex operations and approvals. So who here has gone through the legal process of essentially getting data across to a partner or signing some sort of data partnership agreement? Yeah, many of you. So you can probably imagine all the red lines that you see with the legal teams when it comes to data collaboration. So there's a lot of approval processes that need to be put in place, especially when the data is leaving your boundaries. And a lot of the traditional data sharing techniques, I talked about SFTP and downloading the file in Excel and sending it over email, again, is not really compliant. And it doesn't really help you scale, especially when it comes to being able to innovate in real time and really driving value out of your data. So what does this lead to? A lot of missed opportunities, and certainly doesn't help you innovate within your organizations. So these are some of the challenges that enterprises are facing today. And to essentially address this and make it easier for you to collaborate, we've introduced what we call Databricks Clean Rooms. So, more slide. The solution is Clean Rooms. Clean Rooms essentially allows you to share data in a privacy-centric way. And Clean Rooms was actually introduced, we actually previewed it in the keynote last year. And as of today, we are GA across all the 3 clouds, so AWS, Azure, and just 2 days ago in GCP. So you can spin up a Databricks Clean Rooms across the 3 cloud platforms and invite and collaborate with partners, regardless of which cloud or data platform they're on. So I'm going to now let DJ Sharkey walk you through how Databricks Clean Rooms works and just give you a little bit of intro into how privacy also works within a clean room. DJ, take it away.
All right, so Nikhil did a great job of giving a quick overview of clean rooms, but you're probably all wondering, what really is a clean room? We get the idea, we get some problems we can solve. Let's go a step deeper here. And you probably weren't asking what really is the architecture of a clean room, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of that, and then I promise we'll get a little more use case driven here. So a clean room, let 2 or more parties run approved jobs on overlapping data without actually sharing access to the underlying data or IP. Behind the scenes, the whole thing's powered by delta sharing. You're delta sharing data from not to each other, but to this centrally Databricks-owned and managed central environment. And delta sharing, kind of an implementation detail, but also really important because it powers some really cool stuff. It lets us be super cross-cloud, super cross-region, cross-platform even. Lets you use your clean room without moving your data, without replicating your data. So let's go through an example use case here. This is kind of like your base use case within clean rooms. It's audience overlap between an advertiser and a publisher. Maybe some of you have had this happen in the past, but you just want to know, hey, how many users do we have in common? So an advertiser reaches out and says, publisher, how many users do we have in common? Publisher says, I would love to answer that for you. Just send me your user list. Advertiser, understandably, not so happy about that. I can't share my user list. It's my full footprint. It's sensitive information. There are a million reasons I can't do this. Can't and don't want to do this. Why don't you just send me your user list, publisher? That would solve the problem. Publisher, also not so thrilled about this. So with the Databricks Clean Room, you could actually answer this one specific question without sharing all of your raw overlapping data. Basic idea is both parties add their data to the clean room. You add a notebook, and you say, hey, can I run this specific query? Little picture of it on the screen. And you get an approval, and then yes, you can answer that specific query and get that specific answer without sharing everything. Next use case here is building on top of just data protection. Now we're doing data and IP protection for identity resolution. So here you've got an e-commerce company and an identity provider. E-commerce company wants to work with the ID provider to get universal IDs. Maybe they're trying to create a customer 360. Maybe they're trying to use those universal IDs for like downstream activation use cases. Million reasons to work with an identity provider. Without a clean room, you go through this kind of song and dance of ID provider says, sure, I'd love to give you universal IDs. Send me your PII. The e-commerce company says, no. Why don't you send me your full ID graph and your identity resolution algorithm, your proprietary ID resolution algorithm? ID provider, of course, says no to that. So what do? They use a clean room. And in this example, they both add their tables. You add your PII table, your ID provider adds their ID graph, and your ID provider also adds in what we call a private library, which can be used to protect that underlying code, that underlying IP. And now you could actually assign universal IDs without sharing access to any proprietary information or code. We're actually also recently, I think today, announced some partnerships with some specific ID providers that Nikhil's going to go into later today, or later in this very talk. Last use case here, very similar to the last one, but trying to drive home the idea that there are clean room use cases in any industry, in any vertical. So this one, we have a bank and a credit agency working together to identify fraudulent transactions. So your bank has transaction data, your credit agency has an ML model that can be used to recognize fraud. Your credit agency doesn't want to share the raw ML model. Maybe they don't want to keep track of how often it's being used. Maybe they want to do something like, or just make sure it's not actually like being copied. They want to be in the loop. And your bank can't share raw transaction data. So with a clean room, you could actually permit the usage of the ML model. So you could allow inference on the ML model without sharing direct access to the model, no risk of it being copied, and similarly without the bank sharing that transaction data. Awesome. So those are some detailed use cases. How does this thing actually work? What does this actually look like? We're going to go into a demo now. And as with all great demos, it'll be the next slide, give me a sec. As with all demos, we will start with a slide, right? Just to give you a quick overview of what we're doing. We have a brand, a data provider, and a publisher all working together. The brand's trying to figure out the right segment for them to activate. You can see they're actually all in different clouds, and Nikhil mentioned this, but Databricks Clean Rooms offers fully cross-cloud capability, which means you can meet your collaborators where they are. No need to move data around. And with that, we'll actually start the demo. OK, there we go. Cool. So what we have here is a brand that's actually creating a clean room. There are 3 separate tabs there. It's going to go back and forth a bunch. Apologies, I'll do my best to explain it. Give it a name. They add in the sharing identifiers, which are effectively cross-count IDs. They're actually Metastore IDs for those of you that really know your Databricks. Create the clean room. A few seconds here, it's created. And it'll automatically appear for both the data provider, who can now see the clean room, and similarly for the publisher, who can now see the clean room. Heading back over to publisher can now see the clean room. Heading back over to the brand, we're now going to add data into the clean room. So the brand's going to add their transaction level data. They know, who purchased things from them. And really important call out here is when they add this data into the clean room, they don't share permission to query it. That's only done through these approved notebooks that we're going to show you later. Behind the scenes, this is Delta sharing the data to that clean room environment, not to the collaborators. So we're going to switch over to the data provider. Oh, we're in the data provider account, and we can see the schema. We have no way to query the data, though, not yet. Same's true from the publisher's point of view. All right, behind the scenes, other 2 parties adding their data. Not going to bore you with the same thing over and over again, but same idea. Data in the clean room doesn't mean you can actually see it yet. So we're in the brand now, and the brand's going to actually add a notebook to the clean room. This is kind of the magic of clean rooms. That notebook has permission to query this data, and you could eventually get it approved by your other collaborators, and then you could run anything you'd like on it. All right, so now we're actually adding that notebook in. We're going to select ourselves and say, this notebook is runnable by me. Awesome. Let's see. I'm going to actually add the notebook. And I'm going to go run the notebook. Yay. Not so fast. All collaborators must approve the notebook before it can be ran. This is, as I mentioned before, really intrinsic to the Databricks Clean Room security model. The idea is each collaborator has control over their data is queried. So in a second here, we will switch gears into the data provider's point of view. There we go. Into the data provider's point of view. They're going to open up that notebook that they can see has been added to the clean room. They're going to look at its code. And then they're going to say, awesome. This looks great. Approve it. And the publisher behind the scenes is going to do the exact same thing. See, notebook has been approved. So brand can now actually run the notebook And as soon as the job results in a few seconds here, they could actually see all of the clean room compliant output. They could see the results of those queries that they ran. And this is awesome. This is an example of a fully cross-cloud clean room running approved queries on top of clean room data and only approved queries. Cool, so we just saw a clean room in action. You might be asking yourselves, how does privacy in clean rooms actually work? And we'll go a little deeper into that. The key here is explicit approvals, which allow for flexible use cases. I love the Databricks Clean Rooms approval model. It can support literally anything at all you want. So here we have an example. Advertiser, can write a notebook. Hey, can I run this notebook, this Python, this SQL code in the clean room? Touches both of our data. Publisher could look at it and say, yeah, that looks great, or no. And once it's fully approved, you could run the notebook. What makes this so powerful is you have access to the full power of Databricks serverless notebooks within your clean room. If you have an idea, you can run it in the clean room. Super flexible, supports any industry, any vertical, any use case. Now, some of you might be asking yourself, wow, that sounds like a pain in the butt. What if I don't want to approve every single thing that happens in my clean room? What could we do for that? So we actually offer parameterized notebooks, which will help you scale approvals. Basic idea here is, going to use publisher and advertiser again. Publisher maybe has some privacy-enhancing technologies. Maybe it's k-anonymity, maybe it's aggregation thresholds, maybe it's differential privacy, whatever it is. They could enforce those privacy-enhancing technologies in their clean room. And they could use a runner-supplied parameter and say, I'm only going to run this runner-supplied SQL query if it passes my checks. So they get to totally define privacy. And at the end of the day, you have one notebook, one approval used for many different flexible queries. And advertiser here is happy. They write and run a query. Step 3, they run and run a different query with no additional approval. Fantastic. And then the last step here is restricted internet and output makes code review simple. You got a malicious company, they hand you a notebook. You're in a clean room with a malicious company. Don't do that. But they hand you a notebook, they say you should run it. And you go and run it. Turns out this is also safe because your clean room actually is a restricted environment with limited places it can output data. When you're running a notebook, it's only sending output to you. This means it's actually safe to run things that, as long as you're the runner, you can run it without risk of exfiltrating your own data. And slide.
I'll take care of the slide. I think it's mine next. So
it is. So
right.
At this point, you're probably wondering, wow, I hope you're wondering, wow, Clean Rooms looks great. You're asking yourselves, well, what makes Databricks Clean Rooms the best? And Nikhil will help answer that question.
All right, thank you. One thing, again, just wanted to pretty much summarize what DJ just walked through when it comes to the clean room. So by definition, clean room essentially allows you to go in and analyze these disparate data sets that might belong to 2 or more parties in a privacy-centric way. And what DJ just talked about is collaboration without actually sharing the underlying data. So in that demo, you saw that none of the parties were actually revealing that data to the partner, but you're able to run compute and run analysis on it and see the output. So that's the real beauty of clean rooms. The way that we control privacy and ensure privacy is through approvals. So we've built Databricks Clean Rooms in a more flexible manner, which means that you can essentially control the privacy based on the notebooks that are made available, ensuring that all the parties in that clean room are approving that notebook before it's run. So our privacy is essentially focused on the approval of code. And this really gives you the flexibility, especially if you're doing a lot of complex use cases, right? Because we support SQL and Python, you can essentially orchestrate any use case that you can think about in clean rooms, and we'll see some of the use cases that we've seen in the industry so far. And then last but not least, it gives you that extra layer of enhanced security. So when you actually create a clean room in Databricks, behind the scenes, we actually go create a new account Metastore that's managed by Databricks for that collaboration, which means that any data that's made available in that clean room only the notebook has access to it, and it's able to run the compute. So none of the parties that you're collaborating with can directly see or access the clean room. So it's really important for you to take this away, because this is what sort of clean room unlocks, especially when it comes to data collaboration. What are some of the use cases that we've seen for clean rooms? So we've actually seen clean rooms get adopted across the various industries. The early adopters, of course, have been in the MarTech and AdTech industry. You think about the deprecation of device identifiers and maybe the deprecation of third-party cookies, which has gone back and forth. We've seen many of these industries lean into clean rooms as a way to be able to make their first-party data available to their partners and run analysis without, again, ensuring that it's privacy safe. So if you look at advertising and retail, you have like audience segmentation. So if you're planning a joint campaign with another partner, you can share the first-party data from both the partners and plan your audience that you're going to activate on. Measurement and attribution. So once you run the campaign, how do you go in and measure the effectiveness of the campaign itself? So clean rooms essentially helps you unlock many of those use cases. In financial services, actually we got a shout out at the keynote for MasterCard. We've seen that they're starting to leverage clean rooms to be able to, again, collaborate with their partners and data providers to be able to do things like fraud detection or make sure that they're meeting the regulatory and compliance that they have for being able to collaborate with data. Healthcare and life science. I know probably some of you are here from that industry. You can certainly think about PHI data that is hypersensitive, that you cannot collaborate or share with your partners. Again, clean room provides you the mechanism to be able to still unlock the rich insights from multiple partners, ensuring that you're remaining compliant. And of course, in manufacturing, supply chain, there's, again, a ton of use cases that you can think about when it comes to clean rooms. So DJ essentially started off by saying, what makes Databricks Clean Rooms unique? And we actually started off by thinking about, what are some of the pain points customers have or organizations have when it comes to existing clean room solutions. Again, transparently, we're not the first clean room solution in the market, but we have an advantage because we can actually learn from some of the other clean room solutions, how they've been deployed, and essentially build the capabilities that help resolve some of those common pain points. The first one being, not all your partners are going to be in the same data cloud or your data platform that you're working on. Some of them, again, if you're on AWS, some of them might be in Azure or GCP, or they might be using BigQuery or Snowflake. So it really becomes difficult for you to collaborate with them, especially when you have to replicate the data. And oftentimes you're locked into the vendor that you're working with. And going to your partner and saying, hey, you want to work with me, but you have to replicate your data to the cloud that I'm on, is a difficult conversation. It also doesn't provide the flexibility that you need, especially when you think about some of the AI use cases, right? So a lot of the clean room solutions today are SQL first. So you can only run restricted SQL on the data. But again, if you're thinking about some of the AI use cases, especially if you're training models or doing inferencing, you want to be able to use more flexible languages. And existing clean room solutions don't provide that today. And also, as you start to think about how do you scale this across not only hundreds, but thousands of partners that you're working with? Again, it might be that first clean room that you have with your partner, but as you're thinking about, okay, how do I do this across all the partners and customers that I work with, you have to think about scale and automation. And some of the clean rooms today are restricted in terms of how they enable you to scale. So what we did at Databricks is we wanted to go in and address all of these challenges and pain points head on. So the first thing to note is we essentially allow you to collaborate across any cloud or any data platform. So you can spin up a Databricks Clean Room today and invite your partner, regardless of which cloud and platform they're on, and they can still participate without having to move or copy their data. Yes, they would still need a Databricks account because, again, they're governing their data asset. So they'd still need a Databricks account to be able to essentially connect to that data. But once it's made available in Unity Catalog, they can collaborate in a clean room environment, again, without needing any replication. Second one is, because we're essentially using notebooks, you can use any language that you wish. So we today support SQL and Python, but you can, we're also going to be supporting JVM and jar files very soon. So again, think about those complex orchestration or workflows. Those will be available directly within notebooks and within Databricks Clean Rooms. And last but not least, we've sort of built Clean Rooms from APIs ground up. So if you want to do this at scale, or maybe you want to build your own UI, which is part of your whole data collaboration platform, or if you're a retailer, this is part of your retail media network of how you deliver insights with your suppliers and CPGs. So Clean Rooms essentially allows you to take our APIs, remain compliant with essentially sharing your sensitive data, but again, have your own experience that you want to build on top of it. And of course, if you want to scale this across hundreds of partners, you can use built-in orchestration workflows. So big differentiators for Databricks. Again, we've addressed many of the common pain points that customers have had for Clean Rooms head on. One important, again, thing to focus on is this ability to collaborate, again, across clouds and across platforms. I think this is the really big pain point for a lot of customers and organizations that I speak to is, again, if I'm working with someone that is not in the same cloud, how do I do that effectively? So what we actually launched is what we call Lakehouse Federation, where you can essentially connect to the data in place and make it available in Databricks Clean Rooms and still collaborate. And DJ essentially showcased that in his demo. So big takeaway here. So talking about some of the partner and ecosystem and customer stories. So as I mentioned, we actually previewed Clean Rooms last year. Since then, we've gone GA earlier this year, and we actually launched GA for GCP a couple of days ago. We've actually had a lot of customers that have leaned in and chosen Databricks as their core Clean Room platform, starting with Intuit. So Intuit also has a session here where they're essentially leveraging Databricks Clean Rooms to be able to work with many of their partners. Some of their challenges that they had was a lot of the external vendors that they work with could not access the sensitive data that Intuit collects. So, and they wanted their partners to essentially use what they call Marketplace 2.0, where they can look at some of the prospects of various customers and provide back some leads that those partners can take and work on. So Intuit has essentially built capabilities in Databricks Clean Rooms where their partners can essentially train models on sample data, bring that model into a clean room, and then essentially run inferencing on Intuit's first-party data, again, without Intuit revealing or making that data available to these partners. So really successful, I think. A shout out to Anurag and team that have worked really hard here. There's actually a talk about this as well for Intuit that if you're interested on how they did it, you should certainly check that out. And of course, as I mentioned, there was a keynote shout out from MasterCard as well. So MasterCard, again, has chosen Databricks Clean Rooms to be able to, again, think about this as the core way of how they get data from external vendors into their platform and how they ensure that whenever that data is made available internally or externally, this sort of becomes the core way that they can go in and facilitate sort of data collaboration. So there's a lot of use cases that MasterCard is thinking about when it comes to Clean Rooms, especially when it comes to monetizing data products. So again, they've done a lot of great work here. And many of the things that MasterCard has built is, of course, what we call privacy-enhancing technologies on top of Databricks Clean Rooms. So if you think about how do you ensure that data, the hypersensitive data remains private, you can use things like k-anonymity, right? It's a technique where you're anonymizing data at a certain threshold, or differential privacy, where you're injecting noise into that data. MasterCard's done a lot of work to essentially build this in as part of the notebooks, and again, surface that to their partners when it comes to Clean Rooms. So a lot of great innovation there. And one of the more sort of mature Clean Room use cases that we've started to see is what we call identity resolution, where some of you might be aware of this. This is essentially where you essentially have first-party data, like PII data, about your customers. And if you want to think about building out a customer 360 view of all the different data assets that you collect, or you're thinking about perhaps anonymizing the PII data for further use cases like audience segmentation or activation or personalization, identity resolution becomes really important. And traditionally, what customers have done is they've essentially taken their PII and sent it to the identity resolution provider via SFTP, and essentially trusted the ID provider to be able to take that data, resolve it, and send back their corresponding IDs. Again, not a great way to collaborate, right? Because essentially sharing data that is hypersensitive, which is your PII with the identity partner. Again, you're trusting that partner with that data itself. So what we start to see is many organizations say, can we do this in place? Can we essentially run identity resolution in place where the identity resolution provider can read our PII and convert that into the corresponding ID, which we can then use for things like activation, segmentation, et cetera. So legacy pipelines are not great and lead to a lot of inefficiencies. So what we've done is we've actually worked with many of these large identity resolution providers, including Epsilon, Axiom, LiveRamp, and Deloitte, where they're actually bringing their technology within Databricks Clean Rooms, where, again, the ID provider brings their identity graph and their proprietary code, for example, and they can make that available within a Databricks Clean Room. You, as a customer, can bring in your PII data into the clean room and just run one single notebook. Running that notebook would essentially read your PII data, resolve that with the corresponding IDs, and then you can see the output. And the beauty of this is that, again, you're not moving or copying the data out. It stays in place. If you already have your data in Databricks, you're not, again, replicating this in a different environment. And of course, you can do this at scale. So especially if you're running this on a regular basis, as your customers and graphs get updated, it becomes really efficient for you to continue with this process. So we're super excited about this particular capability and use case, unlocking a lot of innovation for customers when it comes to clean rooms. So just to kind of wrap up before we get into Q&A, I just want to say that we're certainly investing a lot in the clean room space. So as you could probably imagine, we announced preview last year. We've already gotten to GA, and we launched things like multi-collaborator earlier this week. And you'll see many of the announcements that are coming up. So lots of innovations in clean rooms, especially when it comes to being able to scale, when it comes to bringing sort of data privacy. And I've labeled out some of the things that are on our roadmap. One of the things that we're excited about is we're actually looking at integrating some of the clean room capabilities into Databricks Marketplace. So again, if you are a partner or a customer that's thinking about how do I get my partner to be able to access this clean room and start working with me efficiently, you can imagine they can go to a marketplace, find your listing, and start the clean room collaboration with you. And you can sort of facilitate many of the process, especially if you're an ID provider. Again, this becomes a lot more efficient for you to get customers on board and start giving them access to, again, your IP and services. So really excited about that. Talked about output. So DJ essentially demonstrated how we have the ability to output the result set of a clean room for the runner itself. But we're looking at providing more flexibility. So maybe you might have use cases where the output of a clean room gets delivered to two or more parties or both the partners at the same time. So some of these capabilities, again, we're hearing from customers about these use cases, and we've started to invest and build many of these capabilities within Databricks. All right, with that, I want to conclude and say thank you so much for listening. And this is the end of the talk. I'm happy to take any questions you guys have. All right, keep going.